Hello everybody, welcome to a brand new video. So this is a bit of a funny one because this is a machine which I'm using for parts for my other Westwood Gazelle restorations, but I thought it'd be a bit of a shame not to at least show it in a video, and I don't actually know if the engine works. So I think in this video I'm going to just try and see if it will run. Most likely it will need a carburetor clean. I don't know the history of it though, so maybe it has some internal damage. Let's get it into the workshop and we will see if we can get it running. Right, so that's it in the workshop. It can now start to defrost a bit, and I have already had the front axle and the stub axles out of this machine for the W16 Gazelle restoration that I did last year. I'm going to be using more parts from this in a few months' time for a W8 restoration. This is actually a W8 anyway, so it's going to be really good, really handy. But as you can see, somebody has painted it blue and green, which is definitely not original. But yeah, there's no point in restoring this one when I have a better one, which I can restore. So this one is going to be really handy for parts. It will also be interesting to test the gearbox. Obviously I can't drive this machine, but I can lift the whole thing up on pallet forks. So yeah, we'll be able to see, hopefully, the wheels turning. Although, yeah, that's the other thing I've had off it, the gear shifter. So I won't be able to shift gears, but it is in gear at the moment, so it will definitely do something. Yeah, it looks like we've got some assorted rubbish in here. A few parts off the W16 in this compartment. There's the old deck wheel. Coming around this side, lots of frozen leaves. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to test this engine. So let's start work on it. Let's take a look in the fuel tank. There is a bit of dirt in there. I should actually be able to blow most of that out with the airline. Now for the air filter. Usually when I look into these, they're always disintegrating. The foam air filter just falls to pieces in your hands. Maybe we'll have a surprise. Maybe there won't be a filter at all. No. Definitely a deteriorated filter. It looks okay until you touch it. It's like chocolate pudding. We just need some custard. Anyway, I don't want that all to go into the carburetor, so I need to be careful. Chocolate sponge. It's fairly clean looking into the intake for the carburetor. But then again, it could be all bunged up. What tends to happen is, if old fuel's left in them, it all gets gummed up in the jets and in the bowl. Clearly this recoil is not really working very well, and yeah, because we are in gear, I'm either going to have to put the back of the machine on axle stands or just cut the drive belt. I would like to see the wheels turn. It would be good, so I think I'll probably just lift the back up, put it on stands. Right, there we go. The rear axle is off the ground. Right, well that hasn't made much of a difference, except it's not moving forward. Very graty sounding. And yes, I know that on a Westwood you can just lock the brake pedal into position to detension the belt to stop the gearbox from turning, the wheels from turning, but no, this one is all disconnected, so I couldn't do that. So we do indeed have quite a few things to look at here. This cable holds the bonnet up. When I remove the top recoil cover, that bolt will come out and I'll be able to relieve the tension and basically drop the bonnet right down to the ground, which will make access much easier. First of all, we've got the front two bolts. There are two on the back as well, if they're still there. Sometimes they've been lost. But while I'm just doing this, I'll quickly explain the current situation with my channel. I do have another big project on the go, restoration project that is. It's slow. It's not a lawnmower. In fact, it's my first non-lawnmower restoration for quite some time. I know I am very slow at putting videos out, but these videos do take a long time to make. The restoration ones especially. The will it runs are just really to add a bit of extra content to the channel and to say, yeah, this channel is not dead. Otherwise it'd be months between videos. Okay, with that removed, I can drop the bonnet down. So yeah, really, there are many restoration projects coming, but they just take a long time. I actually have 3 in progress currently, but they'll all be a while yet. It takes about 3 to 4 months to do one project, but I don't just start one and then finish one. I start one, I do a bit, then I start another one, because I have to wait for parts and other things to happen. So yeah, I really do tend to have 2 or 3 going alongside each other. Right, that's all the bolts removed. The cover should lift off. The dipstick will come with it. There we go. Fairly clean under there. In fact, fairly clean under there as well. Very good. A few cobwebs. No mouse nests. Yeah, hopefully this won't be too bad. I know that my next Will It Run project will be very bad. So this is just, like I said, it's a bit of a bonus video really. I'll just check this clutch. Not too bad, it is binding a bit, which we don't want, because if it binds then it will squeal. So I will clean that up. Just a quick inspection of everything else, it all looks to be in order. The linkages are both here for the carburetor. Everything moves. The coil looks to be okay. The HT lead is going underneath there, which is interesting. I tend to just put it over the top, but I guess it's alright. It's pulled a bit tight though. But yeah, that should be fine. And yeah, I think I can see why that feels a bit clunky. It's because the starter motor gear is stuck in the engaged position. And I love this. The exhaust pipe actually goes underneath like a car. You can see it just going to the back there. The muffler is actually above the gearbox. I suppose they stopped this because the cut grass, the really dry grass, can collect up there and start fires. But yeah, interesting. You can't quite see where it comes out, but that is it there. The axle stands in the way. So my plan is to remove the fuel tank so that I can not only clean it, but also so I can access the starter motor better, because that probably is going to have to be serviced. I'm also going to remove the starter recoil clutch now. We'll get that serviced straight away. And then I think after that, I'll put all that back together again, the starter motor, the fuel tank, and the clutch, and then we'll see if it will fire. If I can turn it over, we'll see if it will fire. Obviously I need to check the oil, make sure that's all good, make sure there's enough of it. I think there is. I do seem to remember checking it in the past when I first got this, and I think it was alright. But yeah, definitely worth checking again. But yeah, if we can avoid the carburetor, then that would be something. But yeah, it's very unusual for one of these not to need a carburetor clean if it's been sat around for a long time. So yeah, I am fully prepared to give that a good clean. So that's all of the small bolts out. And then to remove the clutch, there is this clutch removal tool, which is available from Briggs & Stratton. And that makes easy removal of the starter clutch. Okay, so this washer is usually cracked. I say usually, all the ones that I work on tend to be, but maybe that's because all the ones I work on are really worn out. But that one's alright. And now for the fuel tank. Okay, looks like the nut on the back is spinning. This does happen from time to time. Just hold it in place. Okay, so that's that one, and now for the other side. Maybe this one won't spin. Yeah, it's spinning. What happens is the bolt just goes really rusty, and then the nut just gets stuck. Okay, we're there. I'm not too sure if penetrating ore would have helped. It looks like it is cross-threaded. But that at least allows me to remove the tank. The old fuel line is very rigid. Look at the cracking in that. Totally rotten. So yeah, I've got some replacement fuel line. That's not a problem at all. I'm not too sure how easily it's going to come off at this end. There we go. So that gives us very good access to the starter motor. As you can see, the starter gear is stuck in the engaged position. So it needs to be lubricated. It might need to be changed as well. It does look a bit perished, but I've got loads of them, so that will not be an issue. And of course, yeah, we need to make sure the armature works. It'd be much easier to get this all cleaned up and tested on the bench. So I'll just take the opportunity to remove it now. And this engine, although it's in a pretty bad lawnmower, if it does run really well without smoking, then I'll probably just take it out and put it into another machine. So nothing is ever wasted. I always like to recycle parts. Remove the second bolt, and at the same time as the starter motor, the plate for the fuel tank will come off the engine. Okay, it was quite stuck, just binding at the top. So that is now free, but the whole thing needs to be cleaned up because this is way too grubby. Not too sure about the brushes. It may need new brushes, but I can give it a good test on the bench. It's just really dirty mostly. And there is the starter clutch. Again, just dirty, it just needs a good clean. So let's first of all open up this clutch. Just got to find a way underneath with a flathead screwdriver. There we go. Yes, it's fairly clean. It's really not too bad. Might have just been a dirty seal actually. It seemed to be binding to the seal. But yeah, I'll give it a thorough clean up. There's a little washer in here. What I tend to do is sandblast these. Sandblast the housing. I do sandblast these as well. Obviously that's up to you. But you've got to make sure you take the piece of felt out first of all. That's for soaking up some oil to keep it lubricated. So I just poke it down a bit and then just sort of work it out. There it is. And then the seal will pop out of there. I'll clean that separately. I'll sandblast this. And the ball bearings seem pretty good. I'll just give them a quick clean and they'll be ready to go back in. As you can see, the sandblaster does do a very good job. So I'm going to probably paint just this top plate. What we're going to do now is reassemble everything First of all, I've got this piece of felt, which I'm just going to stick up into the ratchet mechanism, making sure it's not on its side. There we go. And that can now be fitted back into here. First of all, we have the washer. And then the ball bearings. Just one in each compartment. And then the seal needs to be fitted into this cover. Just slot straight in. And then that will go over the top. And it's actually all held together by the top mesh on the engine. So it could easily fall to pieces again before it's installed. So it's best to keep it upright. And yeah, one more thing to do is to oil the piece of felt. I tend to just use a pipette with some engine oil. We don't need too much. Just a quick drip on there and it will all soak into the felt and help lubricate everything once it's fitted onto the engine. And with the excess removed, that is now a finished starter recoil clutch. So it should lock when turning clockwise, which it does, and it should ratchet when turning it anti-clockwise. And it's doing it very, very smoothly. So there we go. Now for the starter motor. I've got the starter motor attached to a jump pack, so I'm going to put some power to it and we'll see what it does. I haven't actually tested this before, so it will be interesting to see if it works. Fairly impressive. Yeah, it does work. And the starter gear didn't even get stuck, so maybe it doesn't even need replacing. Good to see that the brushes are okay, although this isn't under load, but it does still work, which is something. If they don't work, they either do nothing at all, or they can just turn over really slowly. They can even start to smoke. It got stuck that time. Yeah, so it just needs lubricating. I might change it anyway. Can't really decide, because it has got life in it, but it has got a bit of, yeah, it's got a few chips on those teeth, but it would work. To replace the starter gear, it is relatively simple, in theory. It all comes down to this roll pin. If that is stuck, then it can become a bit of a nightmare, but all you do is knock that roll pin out of there, then the cap will come off, and then you can just easily take this old one off, and then run a new one onto there, and then just replace the cap, and then punch the roll pin back in. I will attempt to replace it, because I think it is going to be best to change it. Just let the lubricating oil soak in a bit. And it really helps to have one of these flat punches. You do not want a center punch. Okay, let's give it a go. Oh, movement. And there we go. I think I might have got lucky with that, because I've had them in the past where they're a total nightmare. So now this cap just slides off, and starter gear can be rotated, and then that can come off as well. So as you can see, it's actually really not that bad at all. But for the video, I will change it. And also peace of mind as well, because this starter motor obviously is good, so it can go on the engine again. And if the engine is good, then there'll be no issues when it gets fitted to a different mower. I can also take this off and clean the shaft, which is probably not a bad idea. Also, I can clean the aluminium housing. In the end, I decided just to put these two into the sandblaster, so they can now be painted. Give them a quick coat, and also I have cleaned the top of the starter motor. Still need to do the shaft though, just give them the whole thing a wire brush just to clean it up. This time I'm going to do it properly with some extra primer like I do on my restorations. Okay, so they can now be primed. Two days later, and I've just painted these with a top coat of black gloss. As you can see, it looks a lot better. In the meantime, I've been working on a restoration project. So these are now ready to fit to the starter motor. Let's just remove the masking tape. It's always tricky to find the end again. I know the housing doesn't look pretty, but it really doesn't matter. I have cleaned up the shaft with a wire wheel. So I'm just going to apply a very, very light coat of lithium grease onto the shaft. And then it can be fully reassembled. I've got a brand new starter gauge here. And then we have the cap, and finally the roll pin, which just needs to be tapped back into place. And there we have it. I need to make sure this starter gear moves freely. That is turning with absolutely no resistance at all. So I'll just clear everything away on the bench and we'll give it a quick test. Here we go. Fantastic. So now I think we can safely say that the starter motor is good and it can now be fitted back onto the engine. Now, of course, not forgetting the plate to mount the fuel tank on. That needs to be fitted at the same time. Screw the bolts in. Now we have the fuel tank. It is quite dirty externally. It's not a huge problem, but I will give it a wipe down before I refit it. The important thing is that it's clean on the inside. So let's first of all get this old fuel line removed. There's absolutely no... oh, it's just breaking off. The clamp is just snapping. Not needed anyway. Okay, so let's take the cap off. I have already shown you inside. It is, as you can see, a bit dirty in there. I'm going to start with the airline. Hopefully that I'll be able to get all of the dust out of there, the dirt. But if it isn't enough, if it's really stuck, then what I can do is I can put some solvent in there, swish it all around, tip it out, and hopefully that'll clean it well. There seems to be some chunks in there. I wasn't expecting chunks. Come on. Yes, it's actually really dirty. But I've got to get all these big loose bits out. There it goes. Well, I think that's most of the loose bits out. Just got to clean it out with some solvent. Yeah, it's really hard to see on camera, but there's like a pool of dirt which is stuck in there. What I have here is a piece of fuel line with a tap on the end. Hopefully the tap is not going to leak when it's in the off position. I've had it before where they do. Obviously they shouldn't do. But I'm just going to fit this onto here. And then I can put some white spirits in there. And then hopefully leave it in there so it can dissolve some of the unwanted nastiness. Okay, there we go. I've just wedged it. It's important that it stays upright. All the dirt is at the bottom. Okay, let's just put a small amount in to begin with. Be sure the tap's not leaking. That'll probably be enough. Take the funnel out, put the cap back on. And now it's time to swish it around. Okay, I'll leave that to soak a bit and I'll repeat the process. Okay, so the fuel line has just started to leak, well the tap has. So let's get this done. I can tip it out and we can see what it looks like. Just going to put a small handful of, well, a very small handful of nuts in here, because as they move around they should help to loosen things. That should do it. We got it out eventually. There's always one. Right. So it doesn't really matter if there's a bit of residue of white spirit in there. But that has made a massive difference. You can see how much we got out. All that dirt, which would have eventually made it into the carburettor. It's really hard to get it in focus, but hopefully you can see in there a bit. It's substantially cleaner than what it used to be. Certainly good enough. Right, so the fuel tank should fit nicely back onto here. Just going to slide that into there. This one can be put on second, that's fine. And the tank should fit nicely into place. There we go. So that'll go over there. And this one will go over here. And I'm not going to reuse the old bolts because they were cross-threaded. So I'm just going to use some M6 bolts with some nylock nuts. Now is a good time to clean the engine. I'm going to use a vacuum cleaner instead of an airline. I don't want to blow any dust into the carburettor, even though it probably will need to be cleaned. And there we have it, as you can see, looking much cleaner. It was mostly a bit of dust and cobwebs. Spiders love these. Right, so now I need to fix the top cover, the recoil. Then we can put it back on here. And then once the dipstick is in place and we've got the cover in place, we can try and turn it over. In fact, it'd be good to see if the MOWER's electrics work. I very much doubt it. However, all of the MOWER's electrics are still in place except for the sensors. That's where it's going to be a problem. That's what's going to prevent us from starting it on the key. So I'll probably just have to put a jump pack straight to the starter motor, which is fine, it doesn't matter. And then we can still switch it off on the key. The question is, why doesn't this pull start recoil? So let's have an initial look at it. It looks like the tabs which hold it in place are actually binding with the plastic. It is quite dirty, build-up of grease, so that's probably allowing it to contact easier, which obviously is no good. The tabs also might be slightly bent in a bit too much, and it would be good just to give a quick lubrication to the spring mechanism underneath. You can just about see the spring through this gap here, and it looks quite clean. So I don't think it would be the spring. It looks like it is on the top here on the surface with the two tabs. First of all, I'm just going to use a plastic scraper and remove the buildup of dirt around the perimeter. And then I'm going to use a brass brush just to lightly clean it up even further. I doubt that's made a difference, but it's something that should have been done anyway. No, it's still binding. It's looking like all I need to do is lubricate. Put a bit around here. Oh, and immediately it starts to move on its own. There we go. That's all it was. Easy. Fantastic. So yeah, that can actually now be fitted straight back onto the machine. We'll just check the pull cord. It looks good. Yeah. Very, very slight fraying, but nothing which is going to cause a problem. Still clean at that end. Perfect. Okay, let's get that refitted. Looks like we've got a little friend. I'll make sure little friend is safe. What a place to live. First of all, we have the clutch. I did just clean up the top of the crankshaft as well. Then we have the mesh grille. The finger guard, I like to call it. I don't know if it's actually called a finger guard technically, but it certainly should be. Keeps your fingers out of there. And there we go, that's that fitted. So now we have the top recoil cover. Make sure the dipstick's in. And then make sure this is on as it should be. Right, that's the recoil refitted. So before I turn it over, I'm going to have a very quick look inside the bore with the inspection camera. There's no harm in looking, although I really don't expect to be much of a problem, because I think this engine was running at some point in the past, like, not too long ago, obviously at some point, but it doesn't look terrible. It really doesn't look too bad. Although I probably shouldn't have said that. Here we have the spark plug, and that's actually looking really oily. So does this engine burn oil? Maybe. Let's take a look inside the bore. I've tried to set this up so you can see me putting the camera in and so you can see the inside on the screen. So we've got to get through quite a narrow gap with it being a flathead or an L head. This camera isn't the best for that because it's got quite a big camera head. So I don't know if we're actually going to get past there. However, we can see in there, and actually what I can do is rotate the camera because it's got two cameras on this head. That is if I press the right button, of course. Okay. Well, there's a valve which looks very oily. And there's another valve which is currently open. Everything is just super oily in there. So you can see the valves. I will try and get the other camera in. The other camera didn't fit, however, this smaller one will do. So we can get right into the bore. The only problem is this camera is not quite as high quality. So hopefully you can see that we do have a view of the bore there. That might be a better view. The bore overall looks pretty good. There's a bit of a scratch there, but nothing unexpected. There's always quite a few scratches on these bores. Now the greater concern is the oil. It might be that it's just been tipped over and it's been stood for a long time. I'll just make sure the engine isn't overfilled with oil, because that can also do this. It can get oil in the bore. Okay, no, definitely not overfilled. Don't know if I can get the camera to focus on that. You can see it's, well, it's within the safe marks, but it's a bit low. Also very thick looking oil, very old. So we don't need to worry about it being overfilled. Yeah, the other thing though is, like when it was being carried on the pallet forks, for example, it was being tipped forwards, and that can get oil in the bore, although it wasn't extreme. But yeah, let's just see if this recoil is 100% fixed. Very good, it all recoils. Obviously easy to pull over because there's no spark plug in. But yeah, this is starting to look a bit more promising. I know it must feel like I'm actually looking for faults, but I'm just visiting the areas which tend to have a problem, all the common failing points on these engines. So there we have the mixture screw, and it looks clean and dry. Right, this is the tricky part, getting the bowl off without damaging the gasket. And yeah, I'm not surprised nothing came out. It's just a good sign that no water came out. To be honest, getting this off without damaging the bowl gasket seems unlikely. Okay, not too bad, but also not amazing. It's got some bits in it, moving bits. So yeah, definitely a good job that I removed it. And it really doesn't look too bad. I think if we clean the bowl out and then put it back on, we'll give it a go. Obviously I can't fully establish if it's good because I haven't dismantled it. We haven't looked through all the nozzles and everything, but yeah, judging by what the bowl looks like and what the float looks like, yeah, I'm quite confident to just, like I said, clean the bowl, put it back together, and hope for the best. So we have a clean bowl. I've just cleaned it with the sandblaster very lightly. It's now ready to refit. And yeah, it looks like the bowl gasket actually is still pretty good. Okay, right, next up, let's check for spark. I'm going to use a Briggs & Stratton spark plug tester. That goes on there. Absolutely nothing at all. So now I have disconnected the kill wire that runs from the tractor's electrics to the engine, so I'm now bypassing any sensors. So hopefully there will now be spark, we'll see. Or maybe not. I've removed the top cover to reveal the coil, and I'm now going to test the coil to see if it actually works. As mentioned before, it's kind of weird to see the HT lead going underneath here. There's a possibility it's worn through and then it's grounding out. It doesn't look worn though. So yeah, I can't really see that being the issue. So to test if the coil is any good, first of all, the positive needs to go onto the contact at the end of the HT lead, where basically where it attaches to the spark plug, and hold that onto there. And the negative needs to go onto the ground, so the outer part of the coil. And what we should find is that we get a reading between 2.5 and 5k ohms. If it is, then the coil is good. And yeah, I'm not getting a perfect connection there, but it is about 2.6. So that tells us that the coil should work. So now we know that the coil is good, and it's almost certainly the points. I can now remove this again. And I know some people might think, oh, you could have just done that before. But I like to do each step individually. Each part is its own thing. So now the flywheel can be pulled off. Amazingly, the threads for the flywheel puller look super clean. Nearly always, I would run a thread cleaner through that first. But on this very rare occasion, it doesn't look like I need to. And now for the part that always makes me jump. Never looks bad on camera though. It's just that pop. You just don't know when to expect it. So just keep tightening these nuts until it goes. Sometimes these can be really stubborn, and it can be easier to put a washer underneath the nuts. Okay, should go any second. There it goes. Quite a satisfying pop. Remove the bolts, and then I can take the whole puller off, and then the flywheel will lift off, revealing the points and condenser cover. Well, hopefully the cover, unless somebody hasn't put it back on. In which case, it's going to be very dirty. Okay, there's the puller and the nut. And now the flywheel will just lift up. So there we have the silver cover, and underneath there we have the points condenser. And it looks really clean under here. For an engine which looks to have been sat around for quite a few years, it is certainly clean. Clean within reason. To assist, I'll just use this pick, just so we can actually get it up. There we go. And we do have oil in there. Now that's come past the plunger. The seal here, the crank seal, looks to be okay. I don't believe it's coming from there, so it must be coming past the plunger in there. Not a big problem for us though today. I'll just mop it up, and then, yeah, it's probably all this oil that's got onto everything and stopped the system from working. Just use some rags. I'm using a new microphone system today as well, so any feedback on that is much appreciated. Okay, so this rag has mopped up most of the oil in that area. There is some more underneath the condenser there, underneath the points. So this gap here will open and close as the engine turns over. So as you can see the engine turning over, there we go. It closed just there, and it opens again, and that gap should be 20 thou. So I've got my feeler gauge, and yep, that is actually spot on. Perfect. So it's likely that it's just really dirty, which is a very, very common issue. Here's a closer view of it opening and closing. Now I can actually see the oil on the contact there, and that is coming from underneath. There's a little pool of oil. So unfortunately I'm going to have to remove the condenser, which is obviously going to mess up the gap. So it's going to have to be reset. But yeah, if I don't clean it, it's just going to keep returning, and it's going to make the points not work again. Such a shame to mess up something that was set perfectly. But it's just the way it is. So that is the condenser. I'm really hoping I don't have to remove the wire off it. I shouldn't have to. I just need to be able to get a paper towel in there to clean it all. Poke it around with a screwdriver so it really mops everything up nicely. Just carefully move that out of the way. And there we go, it's revealed the oil pond. At least taking the condenser out means that I can clean everything nicely. Well, that's looking a lot cleaner, but as you can see, here's the contact itself, and that is absolutely soaked in oil. So I'm going to give that a thorough clean. I'll probably even spray it with some carb cleaner. So as you can see, all nice and clean and dry. It is stained, but it's clean, and that's the important part. This can all be reassembled now. And now to set the gap using the 20 thou feeler gauge. So you can slide the condenser if necessary. But that is set correctly. And just to confirm that it's all still clean, I'm going to insert this piece of paper into the gap, then close it slightly, and gradually pull it out. And you can see there was a bit of dirt still on there. So I'm now repeating the procedure until it is totally clean. Yep, that's looking nice and clean. So hopefully now when I reassemble it, we will have a spark. Let's see if we have spark. Fingers crossed. Fantastic, we do. So that solved that problem. So I think we're getting close to being able to squirt some carb spray into the carburetor to see if it will fire. We can do a leak down test. I don't have a problem with doing a leak down test, but maybe we should attempt to start it first. What I'll do is I'll fit some new fuel line from the tank to the carburetor. I'll also top up the oil. As I mentioned before in these Will It Run videos, I don't like to just drain the old oil because it won't really achieve much. All the sludge and sediment is at the bottom, and you need to run the engines, you need to get them warm to mix it all up, then you drain it and it will all come out. So yeah, just topping it up will be fine. I'll put the top cover back on and yeah, we'll go from there. Again, hopefully this tap doesn't leak. These can leak as well. But there we go, that's a fuel line connected, just for testing. So let's give it a go. This is just going to be a quick squirt of carb spray. So if it fires, it'll only fire for a second. Well, it looks like now the only thing that could let us down is the carburetor. I am risking it by not cleaning it, but it will be interesting to see if it does work. It looks like the engine will run otherwise. So I'm going to take it outside now because obviously I don't want to be running it inside with all the fumes. And we'll just see how it performs. Hopefully it's going to be pretty good. There's really not that much smoke. And there we have it. Obviously not 100%. I did actually leave the engine running for about 15 minutes in that clip there. I just edited most of it out, and it always smoked a little bit. It wasn't too bad, but it always did smoke a bit. So if I ever use this engine for a restoration project, which I probably will do, I will rebuild it, and that will solve the oil burning issue. That's the thing with these old engines, they do just burn oil because the rings wear out, the bore can be scored. It's just the way it is. It's also worth pointing out that the tap leaks, not the carburetor bowl though. I didn't change it, and it looks like that bowl is not leaking, it's just the tap's leaking, so it's running down the front of the bowl. Yeah, those taps nearly always leak. Whenever I restore one of these, I just replace that tap for a standard inlet, just like an L-shaped inlet, because that gets rid of that problem, and then I fit a tap further down the line. Also, it was good to see that the wheels do go round, so the gearbox is at least functioning in one gear. It means the input gear, the input shaft and everything is all functioning, and whatever gear that was works as well. I think that concludes the video. Just a quick sort of will it run, well maybe it wasn't that quick, but it was a will it run, and hopefully we'll be seeing this engine again in a future video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.